Good morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Monday, the 23rd of February, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. The International Criminal Court officially opens a confirmation of charges hearing against former President Rodrigo Duterte in The Hague today. Members of the Duterte Panagutin Europe Network staged a protest outside the court over the weekend, demanding accountability for the thousands killed during the war on drugs. Civil society groups and religious sectors are gearing up for the 3rd trillion peso march on Wednesday, coinciding with the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Organizers say the mobilization will serve as a renewed call for the passage of an anti-political dynasty law and the prosecution of those involved in the flood control scandal. And President Bongbong Marcos and Naga City Mayor Leni Robredo presented a united front during the inspection of the Oplan Contra Baha initiative on Saturday. Both leaders, however, dismissed speculation regarding a potential 2028 alliance. And welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now first on the agenda, supporters of drug war victims gathered outside the International Criminal Court in The Hague a day before the start of the confirmation of charges hearing against former President Rodrigo Duterte. Members of the Duterte Panagutin Europe staged a protest calling for justice and accountability for thousands of victims of the Philippines' war on drugs. Protesters held placards and banners urging the court to move forward with the case and ensure that the voices of victims are heard. The demonstration took place just a day before the start of Duterte's confirmation of charges hearing, a key step that will determine whether the case will proceed to full trial.
For the victims of Duterte's crimes!
Justice delayed is justice denied!
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 Meanwhile, ICC Assistant to Counsel Cristina Conti said they are hoping to ensure that the views and concerns of the victims are presented before the pretrial chamber 1 during the hearing. Conti said many families of victims are closely watching the proceedings and are eager for their experiences to be formally recognized by the court.
This is the distillation of all the best practices in all countries. Kaya kaabang-abang talaga. Para sa mga victims na kasama ko, pareho lang kami nakakapa. Titingnan natin kung anong nangyayari. Pero sana sa haba ng panahon ng paghahanda, talagang sabi namin na naiintindihan namin kung anong nangyayari.
And in other news, Malakanyang denied reports of a road harassment incident allegedly involving a presidential son along the North Luzon Expressway last Saturday. Presidential Communications Secretary Dave Gomez clarified that none of President Bongbong Marcos's 3 sons were involved. Social media posts claim that a 3-car motorcade allegedly intercepted a vehicle carrying the presidential son at around 7 p.m. About 15 men reportedly stepped out of vehicles said to be registered in a Bulacan municipality. And the incident allegedly occurred after the presidential son's vehicle overtook Bulacan registered vehicles, reportedly occupying all 3 lanes of the expressway. Now, meanwhile, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas may deliver just one final interest rate cut this year before hitting pause. According to analysts, the central bank could reduce the benchmark rate by another 25 basis points to 4%, but only after assessing inflation trends and fresh economic data. Economists say monetary easing is nearing its limits and fiscal authorities must now take the lead in reviving growth. At its first policy meeting this year, the Monetary Board cut rates by 25 basis points to 4.25%, the lowest level in more than 3 years. Let's listen to what BSP Governor Eli Remolona had to say in an interview with Kathy Yang on Money Talks.
So was 25 basis points of a cut a unanimous decision by the Monetary Board?
I'm not at liberty to tell you, but there was I would say there was a large consensus.
Large consensus. So for those who countered, Governor, did anyone favor hold?
I can't tell you, but it was a lively discussion, Kathy.
A lively discussion because, well, we have Secretary Go, who first sat in for the first time.
Yes.
It's his first policy meeting, so that's a
Yes.
representation of whatever the fiscal side is planning to do. What were the
Yes,
lively
yes.
discussions like when it just does not border on monetary policy but encompasses the fiscal side?
Yeah, so it was lively partly because, as you know, our mandate is low inflation. And so the discussion was, can we still do something about growth while still focusing on inflation? That's where the discussion came from. But it has been a deep demand problem, but you know that confidence and growth are a two-way street. Confidence affects growth, but growth also affects confidence. So we were trying to do something on the growth side in an effort to bring some confidence back, and we hope that works. We don't really know when confidence will come back. We think it will take a few more months when it comes back, when it will come back in strength. But we don't really know that. Our models say it will come back soon, but that's just our models. We have very limited tools in monetary policy. Basically, we have tools on the demand side, and we are supposed to focus on inflation. So it's not clear how much more we can do. We're looking at the numbers. We'll collect more data and then decide what can we do that will be helpful without sacrificing our mandate about inflation.
Groups and artists gathered at the People Power's QC event to mark the start of activities for the 40th anniversary of the 1986 People Power Revolution. Mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque has this report.
The People Power's QC event kicked off the celebration for the upcoming 40th anniversary of the historic 1986 People Power Revolution. The gathering, held at the Quezon City Memorial Circuit, highlighted the theme, Awit at Aksyon kontra Korupsyon, bringing together music and advocacy on one stage. Several OPM icons took part in the event, performing songs closely associated with the spirit of EDSA. Ai Sigera opened the main program with the performance of Bayan Ko, drawing strong emotions from the crowd. Brothers Arkin Magalona and Elmo Magalona also took stage performing Kaleidoscope World, a song by the late king of rap, Francis Magalona. Meanwhile, Evidancel serenaded attendees with his songs Makita Ka Muli and Burnout. For many in attendance, the event was more than just a concert. It also served as a platform to show that the youth remain engaged in national issues.
Kasabay ng pag-aalaala natin sa EDSA, kasabay din ng pagkuha natin ng pananagutan para sa lumalalang korupsyon at dinasya sa ating bansa.
The event aimed to show that peaceful action and civic participation remained alive for decades after EDSA.
Troubled ang country natin, obviously, and divided. Maraming maling akala, maling paniniwala. Marami din na tama, pero we don't see them as much.
On Sunday, a prayer power gathering was also held at the EDSA Shrine, led by Cardinal Pablo Virgilio David. Among those present were Senator Bam Aquino, Representatives Percy Sendenya, and Attorney Chal Jokno.
1987 Constitution, hindi man ito perpekto, ito'y bunga ng EDSA. People Power. And it has taken us 40 years to evaluate it.
On February 25, the third leg of the Trillion Peso March is set to take place at the People Power Monument, coinciding with the anniversary of EDSA People One. Kapatid Mobile Journal Ivan Tarinque, we are One News.
Don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, as we know, groups are set to hold a 3rd trillion peso march on February 25. Coinciding with the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution, the event aims to highlight calls against corruption and political dynasties. Organizers say that calls for the resignation of President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte will not be part of the protest agenda. Around 20,000 to 30,000 protesters are expected to participate in the event. And joining us this morning is Kiko Aquino D, co-convener of Tindig Pilipinas. Good morning to you, Kiko.
Hi, Ms. Paui. Good morning, and good morning to all of our viewers today.
Okay, so how are preparations so far? Is everything set for your 3rd trillion peso march this Wednesday, February 25?
Yep, all systems go. We had our walkthrough last Friday. We're just having a bunch more meetings just to hammer out all of the sort of just crossing the T's, dotting the I's for the program, and we're looking forward to the events on Feb 25.
What would you say, Kiko, is what's different this time around compared to the first 2 protests?
Well, I think the very tangible difference is that this is the first one we're doing on a working day because, again, as a lot of us are aware, Feb 25 is a special working day, the only one of its kind in the calendar, and it is only the second time that this has happened since February 25 has been recognized as a holiday. So while we're hopeful for a crowd similar to November 30, which is 20 to 30,000, we're prepared for any kind of scenario. If this is smaller, if this is bigger, we're ready for that.
And will anything be different in terms of the program? And who are some of the personalities that the public can expect that will be attending this trillion peso march?
Yeah. So in terms of the program, we're adopting the formula we used in September 21, which is not to have any politicians on stage, just to really make sure that the focus of the event is on both the issues that we're dealing with, corruption, and pushing for the bills that we want, like the anti-political dynasty bill, the Independent People's Commission bill, rather. And also, in terms of personalities who will be there, in terms of the speeches that will be given, someone who hasn't spoken at the Trillion Peso March before, but we're excited to hear from her, is Professor Winnie Monsod. Will be talking about both her experience as an organizer during 86 as well as her current takes on the crises we're going through right now. And then for entertainment, I think, again, sort of new acts that we haven't heard from too often. Spit, the improv company, has agreed to do a segment for us to relating to both the issues that we're facing and the occasion of the 40th anniversary. So a bit of new stuff this time around. It's also a shorter program intentionally because we want this to be a bit tighter and not to impose too much time on the people who will be coming, since we know it is a working day.
Well, I did see that clarification that you posted on Facebook, Kiko, laying out what the march stands for and what it doesn't. And you did list the key demands for this 3rd trillion peso march. It's jailing corrupt officials, passing an anti-dynasty law, and creating those independent anti-corruption bodies. Why did you choose, or why did the conveners now choose to narrow it down to these 3 key demands?
Right. So I think the ikulong na yung mga kurakot has been what we've been chanting the whole time. No? So I don't think that'll ever go away as far as the Trillion Peso March is concerned, and as long as there are people who are evading accountability. Political dynasties has also always been part of the agenda since the first Trillion Peso March. And the second, for the second one, we made it front and center. It's the Trillion Peso March against corruption in political dynasties. So I think those are a natural sort of escalation to continue to have that bill on the table. And then the third demand, the Independent People's Commission bill, I think that's a response to what we're seeing right now, where there is some progress as far as the anti-corruption issue is concerned, but as far as holding people who are closely related to Malakanyang, or even investigating the role of the president himself, all of our other institutions haven't been able to do that. Now, we've had an impeachment recently, which was ended prematurely. So I think the venue to ask these questions is now that Independent People's Commission.
And you were also very clear about rejecting calls for violence, the involvement of the military, and even installing a non-elected group in power. Why was it so important to draw that line this time around?
Well, I think it's always been important, no? So those discussions of the ideas of revolutionary government and whatnot, those have circulated, I think, in the news around all of the previous Trillion Peso marches, and we've been at great pains to say that we are loyal to the framework that is laid out in our Constitution. And I think especially now at the 40th anniversary of People Power, which is also the spirit that animated the 1987 Constitution, we want to be clear that we're not straying from the path that is laid out in that document.
So how do we do that, Kiko, right? You did acknowledge that, yes, things are moving along in terms of the flood control investigations, but the so-called big fish are absent from those important discussions. How do you think the public should push for accountability when it comes to the so-called big fish?
Right. So just to be clear, no, I do want to be a little fair in that. I do think since it looks very likely that cases will be filed against some incumbent senators, we already saw former Senator Bong Revilla arrested in relation to his involvement here. There are some big fish being arrested, no? So that's progress. But again, we say it's not enough because certain big fish that are close to the president are evading accountability. So how do we push that? Again, the Trillion Peso March is a protest movement, no? And so a lot of our particular way of advocating these causes is to go out on the streets and call for these things, no? So I think we've seen that the arrests that have happened now would not have happened if it weren't for the previous marches. And so I think it's important for people to go out on the streets and continue to be firm about this demand. Na dapat ikulong ang lahat ng mga kurakot, not just certain people. But beyond that, I think small things like organizing smaller protests, I think is always helpful to just keep the habit going. And I think other things like to help the case along, like I think a lot of the exposés on people involved in the flood control scam are the result of tips that common citizens have given to media outlets. So I think that's something that hopefully should continue, recognizing that that's a thing that requires quite a bit of courage, but hopefully that's something that people continue to do to shed light on these issues.
Well, February 25 marks 40 years since the EDSA People Power Revolution in 1986. And you've said, Kiko, that this is not just a commemoration, but also a time for self-reflection. When you look at the country today, would you say that we're in a better place than we were 4 decades ago, or are we still facing the same problems?
So I would say we're in a better place than we were 40 years ago, simply because we were able to restore our democratic rights in this country. But if you look at the issue of corruption, which was one of the reasons why that led to the downfall of the Marcos dictatorship, the corruption is worse now. If we look at the issue of human rights abuses, we've seen, while I think the truth about it is still emerging, it's very likely that the human rights abuses under the previous Duterte administration may have equaled or surpassed the abuses during the Marcos dictatorship. So I think, again, I feel that self-reflection is an important theme for this 40th anniversary, because we need to ask ourselves how we let things get back to this level. Definitely, we aren't the most guilty. Those are the ones, again, that those are the ones now facing accountability in the ICC. Those are the ones we're chanting at to be jailed during the Trillion Peso marches. But because it's a democracy, it's impossible that things came to be this way without us letting it happen in one way or another. And I don't have specific answers as to how that happened. That's something that's a burden and a question that I think requires a lot of self-reflection, which is why I think that's something also I think we need to invite ourselves to do. Or we're inviting each other to do this February 25.
Okay, but for those young Filipinos who did experience the 1986 revolution firsthand, how do you make the spirit of the People Power Revolution still relevant to them today? Because as we've seen in your previous marches, a lot of the youth actually attended, but this time it also coincides with the 40th anniversary of the People Power Revolution. So how do we make that spirit relevant to them?
Well, for me, so there's a distinction, I think, between the spirit and the concept. No, if you ask younger people, do they resonate with EDSA or People Power? Maybe not as many people would say yes. But if you talk about the spirit, which is the idea of taking responsibility for what happens in this country, standing up for things that we think are important, and using collective action in a peaceful way to bring about change, I think that's something that young people figured out on their own. Because even before I was involved in this protest, a lot of college students, Gen Z people were already taking the lead on this anti-corruption movement. So I think that spirit is very much alive, whether they connect it to People Power or not. It would be nice if they did, right? And that's something I'm trying to do. But even if they don't, I think that as long as that spirit of collective action is there, then the spirit of people power doesn't really go away, even if another name is used.
All right. Now, on a different note, Kiko, I wanted to ask you about Sara Duterte's recent announcement that she is indeed going to run for the presidency in 2028. And some analysts say that she is strong, but she's not unbeatable. But yet, we still don't really have an idea on who would be the strongest contender for Sara Duterte. And you've been firm in opposing any alliance between the opposition and the Marcos administration. Walk us through that sentiment, Kiko.
So I think the first point I want to give is that the Trillion Peso March movement is not really directly discussing 2028, especially at this time where it's quite early and we want to focus on the anti-corruption issue. So the statements I'll be giving are, as you mentioned, sort of just my own personal sentiments, as opposed to, I don't want to give the impression that I'm talking for the whole movement. And I don't want to divert attention away too much from the current issues towards 2028. That being said, I do think that what people are looking for is a clear alternative to the corruption that we're seeing right now. And while I believe that VP Sara Duterte is burdened with a lot of legitimate questions about her own integrity, about corruption in the offices she was in charge of, and on top of that, she also, I think, the same way that President Marcos has never apologized for the abuses that were done by his father. I've never heard VP Sara Duterte recognize or apologize for the very significant harms done by the war on drugs in this country. So I think it's important to oppose her, but at the same time, it's important to be clear about what we're opposing, right? An alliance with President Marcos, first, I think, models that clarity, precisely because, again, he's never apologized for what his father did. So what ground do we have to say that we're against the war on drugs if we're willing to tolerate that kind of lack of accountability for the abuses of the martial law administration? And how serious can we say that we're anti-corruption if we're going to ignore the unanswered questions in VP Sara's different offices? So I think the very clear path forward, if we feel, and we do feel, that people care about corruption, people care about these issues, is to paint a clear alternative. So I think that the way forward is to be that alternative and not to compromise with one or the other side.
All right, well, we're going to leave that conversation there for now. I know you're still very busy with all your preparations. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us. That was Tindig Pilipinas co-convener Kiko Aquino D.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pawi. Thank you to everyone listening and viewing today.
Now do stay tuned. Morning Matters. We'll be back after this short break. Keep it here. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa. And here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. President Bongbong Marcos did not discuss politics nor any possible alliance with Mayor Leni Robredo during his visit to Naga City on Saturday. Accompanied by Robredo and other local officials, Marcos inspected the implementation of Oplan Kontra Baha in the city. And both leaders stressed that the visit was focused solely on public service and addressing local concerns with no political agenda involved. Robredo also emphasized that she is focusing on her mayoral responsibilities and has no current intention to run in 2028.
All right. Alam mo, hindi namin pinag-uusapan yun. Alam mo, I think the mayor will agree with me na serbisyo muna bago politika. The most political thing that we did today, I wore my pink socks. My pink socks in honor of Mayor Leni.
Hindi ko kino-consider pag-usapan yung political this early. Kasi ang dami ko pang trabahong gagawin. At marami tayo lahat trabahong gagawin. Gaya sa akin, kauupo ko lang bilang mayor, hindi pa nga 1 year. Para pag-usapan yung 2028, parang disservice naman yun.
Meantime, political analyst Ronald Llamas criticized Senator Robin Padilla, questioning his independence and consistency amid his denial of a possible vice presidential bid in 2028. Llamas said Padilla's earlier interviews, where he admitted that he might run if asked by former President Rodrigo Duterte, appear to contradict his latest statement that he has no plans to seek the post. He also questioned Padilla's deference to PDP Laban Chairman Duterte in deciding candidacies, saying it raises concerns about political independence. Llamas further pushed back against Padilla's claim that the opposition is eager for power, pointing out that Vice President Sara Duterte had already declared her presidential bid early. Padilla has since maintained he has no intention of running for vice president, stressing delicadeza and respect for party leadership. Now, for more on this issue, we're joined by political analyst and former presidential advisor, Mr. Ronald Llamas. Good morning to you, Sir Ronald. Good to have you back here on Morning Matters.
Hi, good morning, Pauline. It's nice to be back. Kumusta?
Okay. Oh, Sir Ronald, well, over the weekend, you had another interesting exchange of words with Senator Robin Padilla. You were very critical of his statements. Explain to us, Sir Ronald, what exactly did you find problematic about these statements of Senator Padilla?
Well, medyo nakita ko lang yung mga contradiction sa kanyang statement. Sabi kasi niya na hindi siya katulad ng opposition na very ambitious. This early ay nag-a-announce na kung anong gagawin. Pero ang pinakamaagang nag-announce kasi ng kanyang plano for 2028 ay si Sara Duterte. So, kinuwang ko lang yon, binanggit ko lang yon. Ikalawa, yung sinabi niya na siya ay tatakbo bilang Vice President. Kung yun ang gusto ni ex-President Digong na nakakaso ngayon sa ICC, ang sabi ko lang ay parang malaking blow yun dun sa argument ni Digong na hindi siya pwedeng humarap sa ICC dahil meron siyang problema sa kanyang cognitive faculties, no? Kung nakakapag-advise pala si Digong sa kanya whether tumakbo o hindi, talagang hindi siya bibigyan ng interim release. At panghuli ay yung sinasabi niya na wala siyang ambisyon na tumakbo. Bakit pa niya in-announce na susunod siya kay Digong kung siya ay uutusan na tumakbo for Vice President? So pinost ko lang yung mga ganung mga issues doon sa kanyang statement. Parang, what was that all about?
But on the part of Senator Padilla, so clarify na po niya, Sir Ronald, na wala siyang plano tumakbo daw for Vice President unless sabihin ng dating Pangulo. But do you see these statements as a early positioning na rin for 2028 even if he says he has no plans?
Of course, parang kwanto nakabuntot dun sa statement ni Vice President Sara na siya ay tatakbo for President sa 2028 at nakapili na siya ng kanyang Vice President. Hindi ko sure kung yung napili niya ay si Robin Hood Padilla, pero para magkabuntot o yung ganong klaseng statement. Na sabi nga ni Vice President Sara, last year pa siya nakapili kung sino ang kanyang magiging Vice President. So yung sinasabi ni Senator Robin Hood Padilla na sobrang aga naman, sobrang ambisyoso naman ng oposisyon para gamitin itong issue na ito. Masyado naman silang preoccupied sa kapangyarihan. Parang sila yung mas preoccupied. Yun lang naman ang aking sinasabi. Dahil as early as last year pa lang pala, nakapili na ng Vice President si Sara para maging standard bearer o kasama niya sa 2028.
Pero Sir Ronald, itong sinabi ni Senator Padilla na hindi siya tatakbo without the blessing of the former president, what does that tell you about the influence that former President Rodrigo Duterte still holds despite already being detained in The Hague? At gaano ba ka-significant yung loyalty kay former President Duterte in shaping the alliances, especially within PDP?
Yun nga yung sinasabi ko na kahit nasa ICC na, nakakulong na si Digong at kahit sinasabi nila na kinakailangan ng interim release dahil yung kanyang cognitive faculties are not in place or hindi na gumagana, siya pa rin pala nagko-command from that cell sa ICC. So parang binubudol lang tayo dito sa kanyang mga sinasabi na hindi siya capable of attending the hearing. Actually, finormalize na niya yan. Tinanggap naman ng ICC. Kung ayaw mong dumalo sa hearing, ay okay lang, pero tuloy ang hearing. tuloy ang kaso. No? At makikita natin, sino ba yung nagko-command? Even from that distance. Even mula sa ganong klaseng kulungan.
But based on your experience, Sir Ronald, how are decisions being made? Walk us through some behind-the-scenes decision-makings, lalo na pag ganitong mamimili ang isang partido ng kanilang standard bearer. Usually, paano ba yan dinidecide?
Usually, ang nagpapasya dyan, yung leadership ng partido. No? Halimbawa, yan yung naging proseso. Halimbawa, nung napili si Pinoy para tumakbo bilang standard bearer. Kung maalala mo, Pauline ay wala naman talaga sa landscape si Pinoy nung 2010. Pero nung nagpa siya ang partido na siya yung tatakbo, ay sumunod siya. At yun ang nangyari at nanalo siya. Usually, partido dapat na nagpapasya. Kung tunay yung partido mo, pero in this case, tingin ko nagpapasya ay yung pamilyang Duterte. Specifically, tingin ko yung dalawa. Si Sara at saka si Digong. Kahit malayo na si Digong. Siyempre, may mga advisors yan na kinukonsulta o nagbibigay ng advice. Pero mukhang dito, nagpapasya yung dalawa. Si Sara dahil siya yung tatakbo at si Digong dahil siya yung patriarch nung kanilang organisasyon.
Well, nabanggit nyo na nga rin, Sir Ronald, na sabi ni VP Sara, nakapili na daw siya, quote-unquote, ng kanyang running mate, ng kanyang magiging vice-presidente sa 2028. Who, for you ba, would be a most viable tandem for Sara Duterte? Kasi marami na rin pangalan nga na na-float, May Amy Marcos, si Senator Padilla. And how do you think the vice presidential race will also look like? Kasi pinag-uusapan natin madalas yung presidential race. What are you seeing in terms of the vice president's bid?
Well, ang pagkakasabi ni Sara ay yung kanyang vice president na napili, parang yun ang kanyang magiging attack dog. No? Yun ang titira sa kanyang mga kalaban. Dahil siya, ang focus niya ay governance. Usually kasi, ang pagpili ng vice president ay yung sigurado mo, yung trusted mo. Dahil one heartbeat away yan from the presidency. Kung may mangyari sa'yo, siya yung susunod na presidente. Kaya usually, dapat maayos yung political alliance at saka yung personal loyalty ng vice president. Pero siyempre, iba yung ating sistema. Ang nagiging choice usually, lalo na ngayon sa panahon natin, na yung bakbakan is existential. Ibig sabihin, yung labanan ngayon ay kung sino hindi lamang yung mananalo sa 2028, kung hindi sino yung matatanggal almost permanently from the political landscape. So dito, lahat ng mga posibleng makadagdag sa iyo sa iyong candidacy ay kukunin mo or hihimukin mo na sumama sa iyo. In this case, ang tingin ko, yung kukuning vice president ni Sara at yung makakalaban niya ay dapat may value added sa kanya. Not necessarily kasama niya sa isang partido o kasama niya sa isang grupo. Kaya tingin ko yun yung most probably na maging realignment going into 2028. Halimbawa, yung kalaban niya ay posible na maghahanap ng isang vice president na hindi kapartido para makadagdag dun sa presidential bid ng kanyang makakalaban. Tingin ko may possibility rin na ganun ang gawin ni Sara. Pumili siya ng hindi kasama niya traditionally o historically dun sa kanyang grupo. Although hindi natin alam kung sino yan. Hindi natin alam kung sino yan.
Marami pa po tayong aabangan. But over the weekend, we saw President Marcos and Naga City Mayor Leni Robredo meeting officially para dun sa kontrabaha program. But alam naman natin, Sir Ronald, pagdating sa politika, optics is also everything. May soundbite pa nga si President Marcos showing his pink socks. What message does that send really looking ahead to 2028?
Well, ang message doon ay wala kaming pinag-uusapang politika na tingin ko wala pa naman talaga. No? Wala kaming pinag-uusapan na 2028. Sabi nga ni Mayor Leni Robredo, masyado pang maaga, trabaho lang muna. Pero, sabi mo nga, Pauline, everything is optics. Everything is perception. At very sweet pa yung pagkakabanggit ni President Bongbong Marcos na yung kanyang yung politika dun sa kanyang visit ay yung kanyang medyas. Well, that says enough, no? Yung ganong klaseng sweetness, no, sa dating dalawang magkaaway o magkalaban noong 2022 says a lot in terms of optics, no? Kaya ang message nila kay Sara ay the possibility na kahit nag-announce ka na this early, kahit ikaw ang frontliner, hindi pa tapos yung laban. Marami pang pwedeng mangyari, no? Kahit wala pa kaming pinag-uusapan, ay the possibility or even the probability na lahat ng mga kalaban mo ay isang kandidato lamang ang i-field sa 2028 was not lost on everyone, no? Parang ganun yung mensahe. Walang koalisyon, walang politika, pero the optics is that hindi ka pa nakakasigurado sa 2028. Tingin ko, Pauline, hindi ito usapin ng may mabubuo bang koalisyon, may mabubuo bang United Front, may mabubuo bang partido. Mukhang ang usapin dito ay posible ba na isa lang ang lalaban kay Sara. Tingin ko yun yung usapin dito. No? Mukhang baka hindi ganun ka politically manageable ang isang koalisyon dahil magagalit yung kanilang mga base. Dahil yung mga base nila have been fighting each other for more than 40 years. No? So, ang usapin dito ay magkakasundo ba ang iba't ibang mga anti or non-Duterte forces na isang kandidato lamang ang kanilang i-field kay Sara. Yun yung magiging significant going into 2020. Not a coalition, no? Not a front, a united front, but just one candidate. Tingin ko yun yung mensahe nitong visit na ito sa Naga ng lahat.
Right, because I also wanted to ask you, Sir Ronald, kung kailangan ba talaga ng Democratic opposition, yung endorsement ng administrasyon ng isang ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos, considering that he hasn't been doing so well in trust and performance ratings and his surveys, so kakailangan ba talaga nila yung ganong endorsement to mount a formidable campaign in 2028?
I don't think so. No? Sabi ko nga kanina, ang mahalaga kasi dito ay isa lang ang kandidato. Kung ano yung magiging permutation yan, ay depende yan sa mangyayari in the next 2 years. Pero I agree with you, Pauline, na hindi kinakailangan ng endorsement. Baka nga makabawas pa yan sa kandidato. Dahil kung walang ipapakulong na big fish yung presidente, kung walang mangyayari dito sa kanyang anti-corruption campaign, kung walang mangyayari dito sa kanyang priority bills, halimbawa itong anti-dynasty bill na hindi gumagalaw yung baso, at kung walang magagawa para mag-improve yung economy, ay baka hindi siya maging value added to anyone, no? To anyone na tatakbo sa 2028 against the Dutertes. Kaya inuulit ko ay ang mahalaga ay isa yung kakandidato labang kay Sara. Yung ganong arrangement ay doable. Not a coalition, not a united front, no? Not even an endorsement. No? Kung hindi, isa lang ang tatakbo. Yung ganong klaseng arrangement, tingin ko yung posibleng mangyari going into 2028.
Pero itong early declaration, Sir Ronald, ni Vice President Sara Duterte, do you think this will put pressure now on non-Duterte forces to choose their candidate, or marami pang oras? At besides choosing, unifying behind one candidate, importante din yung messaging, di ba? So ano ba yung dapat na maging platform nila para mag-resonate ito sa mga voters?
Well, una, yung kanyang pag-announce ng candidacy is messaging. To dictate the narrative na kaya magkakaroon ng impeachment laban sa akin ay dahil tatakbo akong presidente sa 2028 at frontliner ako ngayon. So, tama ka, Pauline, it's about messaging. It's about the narrative, dictating the narrative. Dahil ngayon nakaamba sa kanya yung impeachment. No? Ikalawa ay to rally her troops. Gera na, lusob na tayo this early. Or else, baka ma-impeach pa ako. So this early, yung announcement para tumakbo ay to rally her troops and go to war. No? At ikatlo, to send the message sa mga politicians and their clans na mag-negotiate na kayo sa akin. Huwag kayong bumoto sa impeachment at tumalo na kayo sa ship ng presidente, ng gobyerno at kung sino man yung aking mga kalaban. Mag-negotiate na kayo sa akin ngayon dahil officially tatakbo na ako at ako ang frontliner. So, yun yung, at panghuli, pang-bump sa kanyang numbers na mataas na. No? Mataas na yung kanyang numbers, gusto pa nila ay ito ay mas tumaas pa. Para going into 2028, mahirap nang habulin. Huwag mong kalimutan, Pauline, na kahit mataas yung kanyang numbers, kaya pa yung habulin. No? Most of the candidates, presidential candidates na nanguna sa mataas na ratings, later on ay gumuho or natalo. Maliban siguro kay Erap Estrada. No? Kaya yun yung gusto niya, na maging unreachable na siya yung kanyang mga numero sa mga surveys. Kaya yun yung apat na dahilan kung bakit maaga siya na nag-announce.
Alright, well, mukhang marami pa po tayong aabangan leading up to 2028. But for now, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. That was political analyst and former presidential advisor, Mr. Ronald Llamas.
Salamat, Pauline. Good morning.
Don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Nueva Ecija farmers are getting a boost ahead of harvest season as palay prices rise, easing long-standing concerns over low farm gate earnings. Mobile journalist Daniel Dayao reports.
Nueva Ecija farmers are welcoming fairer palay prices ahead of harvest season, giving them relief after years of low farm gate returns.
Masaya kaming magsasaka dahil hindi kami mababaon sa utang. Magkakaroon kami ng kunting puhunan para sa susunod na pagsasaka.
As of this week, fresh palay in Nueva Ecija is priced at 17 pesos per kilo, while dry palay ranges from 20 to 25 pesos per kilo. For many farmers, the current rate offers hope but not without caution, recalling seasons when traders offered significantly lower prices.
Nung nakaraan, bagsak presyo tayo. Naglaro lang siya sa 8 hanggang 12 pesos ang per kilo ng palay. Yung manupulya pa rin ng mga trader. Sila pa rin yung humawak nung naging presyo natin. Sana, wag siyang bababa. Kasi ang kadalasan nangyayari, pagka parating na ang anihan, sa kanila sasabayan ng pagbaba ng presyo. Sana wag na mangyari sa ngayon.
Meanwhile, National Food Authority Administrator Larry Lacson said current farm gate prices in Region 3 reflect stronger market conditions.
Yung pagtaas ng price ng palay, hindi nga NFA yun, no? Yung mga traders na mismo, yun na talaga yung actual na bili.
Yes.
ng mga traders. So I don't think nababarat sila. Masyadong mataas ang presyo ng palay.
The NFA, however, continues to buy palay at 17 pesos per kilo for fresh and 21 pesos per kilo for dry, with procurement primarily focused on small-scale farmers. The agency buys up to 100 sacks per farmer and up to 120 sacks for agri-puhunan and pangtawid beneficiaries. Procurement continues nationwide, subject to warehouse capacity.
We're buying simultaneously nationwide. Walang preference. Basta't hanggat merong mabibili at merong bodega na paglalagyan, dire-diretso lang. That's what we want. Yung kumita ang magsasaka para tuloy-tuloy silang magsaka. At hindi mamatay yung industriya ng palay. We have to keep them earning so that they will continue planting.
In a message to One News, Department of Agriculture spokesperson Arnel de Mesa acknowledged that higher farm gate prices may influence rice retail prices. However, the agency noted that global market movements also play a major role. The DA spokesperson added that government interventions including strengthened NFA procurement and programs such as Kadiwa ng Pangulo aim to keep rice accessible to consumers. With harvest season underway, farmers say what matters most is fair and sustained pricing.
25 pesos tuyo ng palay. Pero yung 20 pesos sa press na palay, maganda na yun. Talagang may kita ng farmer doon. Pero kung kaya pang itaas ng ating pamahalaan, ay mas lalong maganda.
Kapatid Mobile Journal, Daniel Dayao, we are One News.
Meanwhile, Senator Risa Ontiveros visited Pag-asa Island for the first time, joining a maritime domain awareness flight over key features in the West Philippine Sea. Ontiveros personally saw China's artificial island at Mischief Reef, which has been developed into a military base despite being within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. She also checked on Filipino troops aboard the BRP Sierra Madre at Ayungin Shoal and later visited residents and soldiers on Pag-asa Island. Ontiveros reiterated that the Philippines will not give up Pag-asa Island.
We will never give up Pag-asa Island. Kahit hindi senador, bawat Pilipino ay magsasabi niyan.
Now in other news, an 11-year-old boy from Laguna is going viral online. Despite his young age, he has already developed a remarkable passion for building science projects. Mobile journalist Fatima Baduria has that story.
Hindi sa edad na susukat ang galing. Usap-usapan nga online ng isang bata na sa murang edad, inventor na. Siya si Neil, 11 years old at taga-Calamba, Laguna. Pero kahit bata pa, hilig na niya ang bumuo ng electronic projects. Ilan sa mga nagawa niya na ang sariling bersyon ng automatic alcohol dispenser at smart trash bin. Nagsimula raw si Neil sa pagbutingting ng mga kagamitan sa bahay. Kinalaunan, nagpabili na rin ito ng mga gamit para sa mga proyekto. Napapanood niya rin daw kasi ito online. Ikinatuwa naman ito ng kanyang inang si Mary.
Kinahiligan niya talaga ay science. Mahilig din po talaga siyang magkutingting ng kung ano-ano, katulad ng mga sirang electric fan. Tatanggalin niya po yun, kukunin niya mga dynamo, mga coil, tapos nahilig na siya sa mga wirings.
Arduino raw ang gamit ni Neil, isang maliit na circuit board na nagsisilbing utak ng kanyang electronic projects. Ito rin ang sumusunod sa mga codes na inilalagay niya. Sinisiguro naman daw ni Mary na ligtas ang anak habang nagkukumpuni, lalo na't electronics ang ginagawa nito.
Iniisa-isa niyang i-assemble sa Arduino, may mga wire siya na sinusuksok. Papakita niya sa akin yung output. Nakakabilib.
Grade 6 pa lang si Neil pero pangarap daw nitong maging engineer paglaki. Ayon naman sa Department of Science and Technology, may mga oportunidad na nag-aabang para sa mga batang katulad ni Neil. Bukod sa scholarships, may mga robotics competition din.
Yung mga kabataan, tinitrain muna natin sila and then they will compete sa Tagisang Robotics. They will have to make their own robots and program them. Meron pa tayong isa pang innovation competition. Ang tawag natin dito ay I Make, We Make. Nagsisend sila sa atin ng mga suggested solutions nila using the Arduino technology.
Panawagan naman ni DOST Undersecretary for Scientific and Technical Services Maridon Sahabon.
Sa ating mga kabataan, siyempre, in-encourage namin na to continue cultivating their talents, their potentials. I hope that our parents would recognize yung potentials ng kanilang mga bata. And if they do choose and excel also in the sciences and math, they will help and support their children to go and take that career path. The school should also provide a nurturing environment.
Kaya namang supportahan, why not? Kasi mas ikakaunlad din ng ating mga anak.
Mga kapatid, Mobile Journal Fatima Baduria po hatid ang mukha ng balita.
And before we go, here's the latest in sports. LaSalle and UP both scoring statement wins in UAAP Season 88 Women's Volleyball. The De La Salle Lady Spikers stayed perfect after sweeping the USC Golden Tigresses for a 2-0 start. Shivana Laput led the charge with 21 points, while Angel Canino added 13 as LaSalle extended its streak without dropping a set this season. Meanwhile, the UP Fighting Maroons pulled off a stunning comeback to beat the Ateneo Blue Eagles in 5 sets. Nina Itang sealed the win with a game-clinching block as UP improved to 2-0 and snapped an 11-game losing streak against Ateneo. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.